All right.
Okay.
Well, I'll introduce you, Amy.
All
So
right.
I hope I don't butcher your last name, but this is
That's
Amy
okay.
Wilhelmi. Is that how you
Yeah,
say it? Wilhelmi?
that's right.
Okay.
Yep.
So she's my client. I adore her. She's amazing, but she's also a speaker and author. And we brought her on because, well, and she's an athlete as well, but we brought her on because she has a really great way of kind of helping with mental wellness. And I really thought she would be a great person to bring in to kind of help kind of talk to you guys and to us about ways and tools that we can use as well. So with that,
Yeah.
we'll let you start.
All right. Hi. I'm so happy to be here. So my career is I'm a licensed therapist as well. So I've worked with individuals and couples and families and children for over 15 years. And, I think that this topic that we're talking about tonight, called exploring belief systems about food, is just so important for so many ways. We're obviously, as athletes, we think a lot about food and it's part of our plan, and it's a little bit of a difficult thing to understand, as far as the mentality around food, especially when you're new and you've just begun this program. So, this talk is for seasoned athletes and also newbies who are just kind of figuring this whole thing out. So I'm just going to go over kind of what we're going to go over in the talk tonight. So we're going to talk about kind of the mental aspects of food, how we created our own belief systems about food, how to get out of scarcity mode, and then into abundance over our food choices. What is hunger versus starving? So, we'll talk about how kind of hunger isn't really a bad thing. What I'm saying to myself matters. So what that inner dialogue that you're saying to yourself and how that matters around food. Reframing it into food is fuel. So what you get to do instead of it feeling so restrictive. And we're also just going to talk about how we need to talk about it instead of this shame culture around food that we often have. We're going to talk about that transition, maybe for the new people, like how it feels like a lot at first, and your goal actually is to eat a lot more food at first to kind of reset your metabolism. And then also how food is kind of going to get you to your goals, like where you need to go. And you have to do that. You actually have to change kind of your whole viewpoint about it and your mentality. So it's a lot. I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to leave it up to some questions at the end. Feel free to ask me, whatever you want. We'll have a discussion within the community too. So we're going to start with how you created the belief systems about food. And I'm just going to share a little bit of my own story that it's going to kind of probably feel similar to some of you. So, I grew up in the 80s. It was the era of diet everything, right? Like I kind of joke, it was like Diet Coke, everyone was smoking cigarettes, doing a bunch of jazzercise, fat-free American cheese, slim fast, tons of cardio, right? So like the mode in the 80s was kind of like these weird diets with food items that like weren't really food, and then restriction, right? And so what I learned growing up is that, number one, women shouldn't eat a lot. And if they do, it should definitely be fat-free or diet, and you should burn it all off really quickly, right? And that women's bodies should be very thin, and that basically meant very little real nutrition. And as an adult, that kind of led me down some of these paths of trying all these diets like Atkins and no carbs and shakes, and basically not trying to eat a lot so I could save my calories for drinking, right? And not only did it tank my metabolism, but it also messed up my mentality around food and my self-esteem. And I felt like I was kind of this like running hamster on a wheel. I was working out a lot. I was doing a lot of HIIT workouts, and I was barely eating because, I just didn't think that that's what you should do. and it doesn't do any good for your body, you know? Like, I think it was just, I was kind of drained and I was going nowhere. So before I started this journey with Fit Body, the first thing I did was realize, number one, that was a problem, and number two is hire a nutritionist. And so I think a lot of people, again, have kind of this belief systems about food, and it's really important to think about your own story with food, where that comes from, what you were taught, what you were told, and then figure out for yourself, is that working or is that not? I bet you a lot of people in our community now are here because of something similar, right? They were like, I just didn't know what to do. So here I am, and I'm here for my coach to teach me something about it, right? But I think it's, again, important for you to kind of mentally go back to that place when you're having those days that you're struggling and really trying to tell yourself, like, I am not the expert. I am here to take advice. I am here to unlearn all of those unhealthy habits and unhealthy messages that I was sending myself or that had been messaged to me. And I'm here to do something totally different, right? I think for a lot of athletes, this is completely different from what they're used to. You know, my first thought was, whoa, I'm eating a lot more, right? And then, oh my gosh, what if eating a lot more is actually going to do the opposite? I signed up for this Fit Body Fusion thing to hopefully get into better shape, but eating a lot more, how's this going to work, right? So I had all these questions in the beginning, but really that is kind of the process of submission that you kind of have to go through in order to kind of do this program, right? So there is a process of refeeding at first. You have to do that to repair your metabolism, right? But then you also have to repair that mindset about it. So for me, when I invested that money and I signed up, you know, with my nutritionist, I was like, well, that's it. Like, I'm not the master of this anymore because I'm paying for it and I'm paying somebody else to try to help me with this thing, right? So from day one, mentally, I had to commit to, no, this is a new way of doing things. No, this is a new way of being in life and living in my body. So did I ask a lot of questions along the way? Yes, I did. But did I stick to the plan? Yeah. And I'm still sticking to the plan, right? And what I really figured out is that what sticking to the plan, following someone else who is the expert in this, made me really begin to love myself more and be kinder to myself and say kinder things to my body and the choices that I was going to make. So how to get out of scarcity mindset is kind of the next thing we're going to talk about. So when we view our food of what, like, we can't eat versus what we can eat, that becomes a problem. So what we need to start doing is looking at the food that we're going to consume and saying things like, man, I get to fuel my body this way. I have the privilege of fueling my body this way instead of I can't eat this, or I can't eat that. There's a really good practice of actually saying this, like, internally or even out loud if you're not around anyone and they don't think it's weird. But like, I have the privilege. I am lucky that I'm able to be in this community. I'm lucky that I get to fuel my body and eat the food that I'm eating. And that kind of just changes the whole thing, right? Because if you're like going around like, I can't eat that cupcake, I can't eat that piece of cake, man, this is so restrictive, then it's going to feel restrictive to you. Whereas if you look at your food and you think, man, this is pretty awesome that I get to, eat this fruit or have this protein. And wow, what is that going to do for me? What's it going to do for my body? And what's it going to do for my progress? You're just changing that script, right? So, you think about all the colors, the textures, the flavors of all this food and what that nutrition is going to do for you. And how will this propel you forward towards your goals, right? What will it feel like if you accomplished your day? What would it feel like tomorrow morning if you met the goals from your day before? Those wins add up. It's like tiny little baby steps, right? Like, I completed my nutrition for the day. Awesome. And then you wake up tomorrow and you're like, I did that. Great. And all those little wins are just helping your self-esteem. If you mess it up, because we all do sometimes, right? Another important piece of this is it's so important to admit it, not only to yourself, but to your coach, right? Do not bury that shame, because that's just going to set you back. Do not bury that shame, because then it puts you back into your nervous system. You're putting the shame into your body. You need to tell your coach, you need to admit that you did this. And you know what? The beauty of life is that you get to wake up the next day and try again. You're not off track. You didn't totally mess it up. I mean, yeah, so you made some mistakes, but you get to wake up and you get to try again the next day. And your coach, oh, we have a question. Should we wait for questions until the end? Yeah. Okay. And then your coach might actually be like, you know what? Your body handled that pretty well, and maybe we'll feed you more. It's actually not a bad thing, right? But if we're holding on to shame, we're messing up our progress even further. So the next topic is, what is actually hunger versus starving? What is actually going on? So hunger actually isn't a bad thing. It may mean that your metabolism is starting to repair. It's not a good thing. You're never hungry, because then, like, let's say that you did go through this phase of life where you were dieting and exercising way too much, and you're not feeling those hunger cues. That actually means your metabolism is messed up, right? If you're hungry after you're feeding yourself, it means you're boosting your metabolism. You're lighting that on fire if you're doing your training and you're feeding, and that's not a bad thing. So I would love to be able to do away with the language of starving. I'm starving. You're not starving. It's okay if you're hungry, right? It actually probably means that you're doing the job that you're supposed to do, and you're burning through your food the way that you're supposed to burn through it. So signs of actual almost starvation, though, are kind of like growling, really growling, gurgling stomach, obviously lightness in your head, dizziness, feeling kind of totally empty. We don't want those things. Then you need to look at what you had for the day and figure out, okay, maybe I do need to fuel my body again. I do need to eat, right? We don't want those. But those little like, oh, like I'm hungry. It could be stress. It could be lack of sleep. It could be cravings. Cravings are different than hunger. If we're on social media scrolling through Instagram, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many like beautiful food pictures or whatever, or reels come up of people baking things. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really good. But that's just a craving. That's much different than being actually hungry, especially if you're feeding yourself regularly, right? So drink some water, pull out your mantras that I'm going to give you at the end of this. I'm going to give everyone like a little one sheet. Corinne's going to help me share it. I made 40 mantras of like things that you could think of when you're about to eat, or when you're thinking about eating for the day. So again, sometimes we're stressed, sometimes we're in a bad mood, sometimes we're going to get our period, sometimes we're thirsty. When you're in these zones, what you can do, and what I'm asking you to do, is kind of slow down the intake, right? So choose foods and choose to eat when you're calm, or plan ahead. There are seasons in my season where I do prep more, right? I'll prep meals for the day, and then I have planned ahead. I put it in my tracker. I've planned ahead. You could go to the macro talk about that one. But when you've planned ahead, or when you have your things with you, it's much easier to make good choices. So that's a choice when you're calm. Eat slowly. Think about your goals when you're eating. So this sounds cheesy, but like maybe you can envision yourself on that stage at the end, right? Think about your goals and then think about how you're going to fuel your body in order to get to those goals, the choices that you're making. Our next point is what I'm saying to myself matters. So there's actually scientific evidence that if you're saying nasty things to yourself, your body kind of goes into this almost like fight or flight mode where it is feeling so desperate because you're treating it so badly. It's like almost like abuse that it holds on to fat. You're like so stressed. You're saying like, I'm fat. I'm never gonna make it. I'm worthless. I'm whatever. And your body goes, ugh, because you're actually holding all of that negativity and your tension in your body. And then your food digests differently. It actually does. This is scientifically proven. So if you're eating and you're feeding your body and you're saying kind things to yourself, like, good job, like doing your nutrition today. Awesome for making those choices. You're going to rock it. You're rocking this prep. You're doing well. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You're checking in with your trainer. You're, feeding yourself on a regular basis. You're not in that scarcity mode. You're kind of cheering yourself on. You're your own cheerleader. Your food actually digests differently. Surprising, but true. So when you catch yourself saying something negative to yourself, first step is to recognize it. It's like holding your hand up, like, okay, I'm doing that thing again. Recognize it. Then there needs to be a replacement. And for clients, I feel like this is the hardest thing to do because they're like, but Amy, it doesn't like feel genuine because I don't actually feel good about myself. I don't actually feel like I'm worth it or whatever. It might feel very foreign at first, but do it anyway. So something negative comes in, you want to say, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm blah, 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 go down that road. You recognize it and then you replace it with something positive. So you're doing well. Like, even if you can't come up with anything, look at this list of stuff that I'm going to give you and say one of those things to yourself, okay? And the more times that you do that, the more positivity you speak into yourself about your food and your body and your choices, the more that will start to feel real, even if it doesn't feel real at first, okay? Along these lines is stop comparing yourself to others. You inhabit your body and you make the choices that you need for your food based on you and your coach. That's it. Everybody else and their influence doesn't matter. There are so many people along the way of this journey that, number one, don't understand it. Number two, are jealous. Or number three, just are in their own like negative shame spiral. And they're going to try to discourage you from your goals, right? Do not compare yourself to anyone else. Don't listen to any of that negativity, because the more of that negativity that you input into your system, the more that's going to weigh you down. So if there aren't positive people in your life, or there is a lot of negative stuff floating around, you have to do a better job at your boundaries. Okay? Just be really confident that what you're doing with your nutrition is right for you, period. And that's why you hired a coach. That's why you're on this team, is they are working with you to make that happen. The next point here is food is fuel. So a mindset that food is fuel will get you very far. So this sounds a little bit wooey, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like you can kind of tap into your body and feel around and kind of intuitively feel what you need the further along that you get down the line in this process. So I think that the seasoned athletes can kind of go, oh, like I'm feeling a little bit lightheaded, or I can feel my sugar getting low or whatever. Maybe I need a little bit more carbs. For me, if I get that pretty strong hunger feeling, I look at my tracker and I say, did I have a fat with my last meal? Because I can almost feel the lack of fat that I might need to add in. So Food is fuel. Think about your body as like an instrument, okay? So if you are a top musician, you need that instrument to work really well. And so you have to think, how am I going to tune my instrument that to make it work really well, so to get me to where I need to go? Or like your car, like you're going to do maintenance on your car, you're going to fill it with gas, you're going to make sure it's clean, and then it will get you to where you need to go. So we kind of need to think about nutrition in the same aspect. How do I get my car to drive the best that it possibly can? And so those are kind of the choices that I invite you to make. Sure, you can slide a Big Mac into your macros if you want to, but then how will that fuel your car? How will that make you feel? How will that make you feel as far as the shame thing goes? How will that make you feel the next day? Is that getting you towards your goals, or is it getting you farther away? Is that actually being kind and loving to yourself? Maybe not, right? The next point is we need to talk about this more, period. So those check-ins with your coach, they are made for you to be more coachable. They are made for you to be more successful in your investment. And when we don't tell the truth, we're not only messing up our investment, but we are creating more problems with food. And that might be part of the reason why you're here to begin with, is because you had some problems with food. So not only log it, but talk about it, right? And if you really can't do these things, if you cannot do that, if you can't have that relationship with your coach, then maybe it's time for you to think about some deeper healing therapeutic work around food, if you can't do that. So usually the first goal, like I mentioned at the beginning, is to eat a lot more than we were eating before, and choosing more nutrient dense foods and eating more frequently. Now, this can be really scary at first. I'm just going to say that it could be scary, especially if you have tried all the diets, or you have, kind of lived in this scarcity zone for so long. Now, but you're not only fixing your metabolism, you're fixing your relationship, and you're fixing your mindset with food. So think about every single macro as getting you to where you want to go. Food is no longer the enemy, right? Food is the difference between the lifestyle of those people on top. Maybe if you are a competitive athlete, I know some people here are lifestyle, but if you're the competitive athlete and you look at those, the top ones, and you're like, man, I want to be there, or man, I want to get a pro card one day, or man, I'm whatever your goals are in this sport, they are eating, they are feeding themselves. They have figured this piece out. Okay. So your muscles need the nutrition that you're going to give them. And it's a very delicate science. And if you don't follow through with the nutrition piece, that's half of it, right? So you either follow the plan and it works, or it doesn't. And I'm inviting you to wonder, like, why would I be investing in this without proper follow through and without proper work on changing my mindset? So if we do something off the plan, we just need to see it as a learning experience and move on, right? Again, letting go of shame. Everything is a learning experience. We're all learning, we're all growing, and you have to let it go. Don't let it sit with you. You have to evaluate maybe why it happened. Why did I do that? Was I stressed this week? Was I not sleeping? Was I just go, 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 and I didn't plan properly? So evaluate the why. And then maybe the reason behind, why I didn't choose to follow my nutrition. And then again, the next day is a new day. So you get up, you start again, you learn, you let go, you move on, but then you also kind of note that stressor. Oh, maybe I shouldn't take my kids to the zoo all day and plan no food for myself and buy them hot dogs. That's like a recipe for disaster. It's 90 degrees out. I'm at the zoo. I don't have my food, right? So again, we're planning, we're doing it again. We're learning, we're recognizing, we're moving on. And I think we're at about 30 because we're going to leave time for questions. So, I think food and changing your relationship with food in general is just a process of really learning to love and value yourself and say that, like, I'm worthy, I'm worth this. I can do the things that those athletes that are winning and that I look up to, I can do that. But I have to start with like a process of self-love. So that's it. We're ready for questions. Anybody? Comments, questions? No. Silence.
You guys are so quiet.
Oh, and I can see you. Did you say something?
No. Oh, I said it's not normal for everyone to be so quiet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I have a comment, but it's actually related to my wonderful coach, Corinne. I am coming from a long history of eating disorder, and in the last 13 or 14 months we've been working together. She was very kind to me. And
well,
she
thank you.
She taught me exactly that. She taught me to fuel my body. And my I mean, I don't like to call it relationship with food, but I guess my viewing of the food has changed so much that I enjoy every day of it. And that's exactly the switch in the mindset that I guess I needed to accomplish to be happy with what I'm doing every day. And it, you know how they say it takes on average 7 times to quit smoking. So it definitely got pounded into me that my weight doesn't matter when I step on that stage, and that my body needs my fuel to be awesome. And I'm very thankful for that, Corinne.
Well, I'm glad too, because it's true. Like, they don't weigh you when you get on stage, and that's something that I think we all coaches have to tell our clients is they're not going to put a scale on the stage when you step on it. So weight doesn't matter. It's just about fueling your body and, looking the best that you can look. So that's coming with proper fuel. So I'm happy for you, Irene. I'm proud of
you. Thanks. So I think this was very educational, Amy. I think everything you said definitely finds its place in my mind of how I'm looking at this sport right now. But it did take me a while. I've been competing for 5 years, and I've been with the coaching service with Corinne for like 13 or 14 months. And it has been a journey, and you learn about yourself every day. And if somebody who hears you today, I mean, understands English for sure, but it does not, reaches the soul, it's okay. Because if you keep repeating, thinking the same thing to yourself, you will eventually end up in the right place.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Like I said with the clients, I think that's the hardest piece at first. They're like, okay, I'm supposed to say all these positive things to myself, but I don't believe them. And I'm like, that's okay if you don't believe them. But like you said about the smoking, like the more times that you repeat it over and over and over, sometimes, clients will put sticky notes on their mirror or on their car visor or whatever, and it will feel real at some point. It will.
Anyone else have any questions? Comments?
Thoughts,
things to contribute?
comments? Yeah, anything.
Personal stories. quiet group tonight.
So rare.
Well,
If nobody has any questions, Amy, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or did you get through everything?
Well, I planned for the 30 minutes, so I think I pretty much covered everything. I mean, like I said, I do have an attachment that I'm going to share, and it's just kind of this 40 mantra document that I made, and it really goes through some of those things that we touched on tonight, like what you can say to yourself in order to change your mindset about it. I think that again, if we're thinking about in general our relationships with food, it's so important to dig in and maybe even do an inventory of like where you learned what you learned. You know, I'll give you an example. A lot of people will say something like, well, when I was growing up, my mom made me clean my whole plate, right? That's common. I don't know if it's regional or whatever, but in the Midwest here where we farm, it's eat all the food on your plate, right? And what does that create? Because then you're not really listening to your body, that you're not listening to your hunger cues, you're just doing what you're told, right? So really kind of think about your past and your family structure, and maybe what your family says about food, what especially your biological family, your mother and father, what was that like for you, and how that created maybe some of the issues that you've had along the way. Because then you can recognize when it's almost like that doesn't sound like my voice, right? That sounds like my mom's voice, or that sounds like my grandma's voice, or that's not me right now. And I think that's kind of hard for us to just separate out, especially when we're doing something that's a lot different from most family members or friends.
Yeah, Amy, I think that's such a great point, and something I've been trying to like incorporate a little bit more with my clients, because I think it's so important to get to people's like root of where their relationship with food came from, like where their thoughts are, their feelings are around food.
Yeah.
And it's important when you start working with somebody, or even all of us as a client, to like really kind of, I think everybody thinks this is just like, oh, this is a program and we're going to get a diet, but there is so much psychology to it. Like you have to understand what your triggers are, and what the baggage you're bringing with you into the program, and how to, how to empty the suitcase before you can kind of start over. So.
Absolutely. I think the other thing that our athletes probably struggle with is like, you don't have to explain what you're doing to anyone either. Like you don't owe anyone an explanation, right? Because if you are on this program, you are doing something that's a lot different from those around you. And I think even for myself, like when I started, I felt like I had to like explain it, like when I was like bringing meal prep somewhere, or I had to, when you're down to the line, you can't go out to dinner with friends. I felt like I need to kind of explain it to people. And now I don't anymore. Now I'm like, I'm doing my thing, and this is my lifestyle, right? So I think that needs to kind of shift too in order to continue.
Yeah, I kind of liken it to somebody who, who's given up drinking, and they go out socially, and then they have a really hard time because everybody's like, oh, why aren't you drinking? Oh, why this, why that? And
yeah,
it makes them uncomfortable. And I feel like it makes the people that are drinking more uncomfortable that someone's not drinking. It's the same way with food. I find that with food.
sure.
Like, people apologizing to me all the time. Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm eating this in front of you. I'm like, I don't care.
I don't care.
It's your choice. It just doesn't bother me.
You do you. Right.
Exactly. But I think that's all it all ties into like our beliefs and our attitudes and what we've grown up with and what our learned behaviors around food and consuming food and what that looks like.
Right. In social settings, what I find most interesting too is that people will try to sabotage you, right? And they'll be like, oh, come on, you can just have that one little piece of cake, or, you know, here, you know, it's just one thing, or it's just one meal, or, you know, why is it such a big deal? And you're like, dude, stay in your own lane, right? But I feel like that just comes out of, I mean, in my mind, psychologically, that's just based on their own insecurities, their own fear, because you're doing something different. And obviously you're looking amazing and you're getting on the stage and doing this thing that they don't really think they can do ever. So you have to kind of be able to have boundaries around that too. Yeah. Again, you don't owe anyone an explanation. You can just nod politely and walk away.
Amy, I really liked how you addressed, changing the mindset of choosing and telling yourself, I choose this.
Yeah.
I think so many times a lot of the dialogue with myself included, will be like, I have to do this. You don't have to do anything, right? So it's reframing everything and reminding ourselves, I choose. This is what I choose. Like that, it's an amazing freedom we have. We're all very fortunate to be in this community and to put ourselves to have all these opportunities. And so, yeah, we choose. And sometimes our choices aren't the best, and that's okay. But even in that moment, you still get to choose. You still get to choose, if you want to have A or B.
Right.
And I find for myself, I hold myself 100% accountable. So if I choose to do something that's not in line with my goals, that's what I chose, and I accept the natural consequences of that. I don't beat myself up. We just kind of, it's like you said, Amy, you get to go to bed and you get to wake up the next day, and you get to choose to choose differently, or not.
Yeah.
And I think we, a lot of times, all of us, we get all up in our head and we take that for granted.
Yeah. I mean, I love the word privilege. Like we are all so privileged to be able to do this. And so I struggle when I hear athletes saying something in the restrictive mindset that's like, well, my husband's eating a whole pizza and a whole ice cream thing in front of me, and that's not fair. And I'm like, but you chose this, and it's a privilege for you to be able to do this, and you don't need to make everyone else around you suffer because this is the choice that you're making, right? So again, it is a shift. Like we're not like tying you to the stage and putting on sparkly heels. Like that's you chose that.
True.
I also just think another mindset shift is like, if you're going to keep doing this, like you have to kind of see the long game, right? Like, so you have to shift from, I'm doing this from this little period of time, to maybe this is a lifestyle that I'm interested in. And maybe this is a lifestyle overhaul. And if it's a lifestyle, then maybe that even takes away that little bit of like restrictiveness even more, because you're just like changing your whole being. Like Irene said, like, she's like, I've been working with Corinne for 13 months and oh my gosh, how my mindset has changed, right? And I think like what we're doing is such a gift to be able to just reframe the way that we see food and fuel and even women's bodies and muscularity and community. And, we're doing something so amazingly positive. So you have to kind of remember that it is not the norm, like the training that we do and building muscle and feeding ourselves the way that we do is not normal in our society. We are the outliers, but that is super cool. And so you have to think about like, that I'm in this thing that's pretty amazing. So. Somebody raised their hand. Marsha James, go ahead. You have something to say? Hi.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing on this topic. And, this topic actually reminds me, I do have my cravings, but I also do know that, in the past when I've chosen those cravings, I know that it doesn't make me physically feel well. And so when I have those cravings, I have to remind myself of how it made me feel. So that way I choose to eat something different, which is better for me.
Yeah. It might sound like a good idea in the moment, right? And then you're like,
right.
Ooh, I haven't had that in a really long time. And that did not feel very good. So
no. Yeah.
Again, it's like that intuitive, like eating something and feeling around in your body to figure out if that is helping you or not.
I kind of liken it to like being really hungover, like over drinking alcohol and then waking up and feeling so horrible and thinking, I don't need to do that again for another 6 months, kind of a thing. I feel like the same kind of thing comes when you have been eating really clean and then you eat something really garbagey. You're just like, oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
You get a food hangover and then you're like, okay, I don't need to do that again anytime soon. And it reminds you, where I feel like we are kind of exclusive in that regard, or people that switch to this lifestyle, it takes a minute to get there. But once you get there, it's like the opposite. I feel like people who eat like garbage all the time, it's such a mental struggle for them to eat healthy. Like, I don't even know what to pick, or I don't want to, or they don't even want to. Where I feel like kind of opposite happens. If you just stick with it long enough and you start eating really clean, kind of the opposite happens, that becomes the norm. So when you do eat something garbagey, your body lets you know it doesn't like it.
Yeah.
I feel like this lifestyle makes you so much more in tune with your body, because you get to a place where you feel good 90% of the time. So when you do eat something garbagey, you realize, God, food really impacts how you feel, your mood, your energy, your digestion, all of it, but if you're eating like garbage 90% of the time, you don't know any different. You don't have I feel really good to compare it to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my body kicked me off of energy drinks lately. I had like one bang like a month ago, and my body was like, nope. I was like, okay, bye.
Yeah. I just think it's really cool. You can get to a place where you can get really, really in tune with your body and know how things impact you,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was religiously drinking a Rockstar a day, like, you guys know this, religiously for a very long time. I haven't had one in probably 6 weeks, 7 weeks, not one. So
you go, girl.
I tried one and I like drank a few sips. I'm like, oh, this doesn't even taste good. Like, I don't know what happened, but haven't had one since. So I agree with you. Like, sometimes our bodies they just tell you, like, I don't like this anymore. I'm done. And that's it. So
stop eating it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know that something that I like to share with all of the women I work with is, number one, give yourself grace, right? Like, no, there is not one perfect person. Like, you can probably question Corinne and Ann and I, and we can tell you horrific and funny stories about just like different things that we're doing. So give yourself grace. And the other thing I like to share is that it's not all or nothing. So many of us, we get stuck in this all or nothing mentality. So like, you think like, well, shit, I totally did not hit my macros today. So whatever, forget it. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to just like eat everything, whatever you're thinking. And that is so not true, right? Like, what makes the difference is that you can do, and Amy mentioned this in the beginning, like one small change, they all add up and it does make a difference. So maybe it wasn't a perfect day, but that's okay, right? Like, you can do one small thing Maybe that day it's like you're like, okay, I'm going to eat some spinach so I can get some fiber and some greens and some micronutrients, and that's good. You give yourself grace and you move on. But like, I really try to pull people off of that all or nothing mentality. This isn't about perfect macros every single day, because that's not realistic. We don't live in these bubbles. Life happens. We all have so many different things that, you know, are surrounding us and that we have to deal with. So yeah, I'm not about the all or nothing mentality, because I don't think it's realistic and I don't think it's healthy. So, you know, I always encourage everybody, give yourself grace, you know, do what you can,
Yeah,
show up
same.
as, you know, show up in the best way that you can in every moment. And in every moment, it's going to look totally different. Your best is going to look different day to day.
Yeah, when I have clients that check in and they're like, I didn't hit zeros, like I would never expect you to. I don't expect zeros ever. Like if I ever hit zeros, I would be shocked because that never has happened. But you know, like no, I mean, I have seen it with some of my clients. I don't know how they do it, but I don't expect that. And I don't want that. I think, you know, nobody's perfect, like Natasha just said, but you know, as long as you're doing your best, you're showing up for yourself every day, you know, you're putting in the work, and, you know, none of us coaches, I think, expect perfection. So it's just about trying, doing your best. Yeah, that's really it. And yeah, giving yourself grace. You know, if you have a bad day, let somebody know, or let your coach know, just, hey, I had a bad day, and log it.
Yeah. Marianne, you have a question.
Oh, no, not really. It's just going back to what you
Comment.
said about, because, you know, I'm sure some of us are parents and we have children. When we try to kind of guide them in what they eat. And I just remember what you said about finish your food. And I'm pretty much guilty of that. But I think it's important for us to understand and pass it on to our children, the intention. My parents are very good about that, the intention of why you need to finish your food, you know, because it helps you to be good about what you eat, what you need to get, and what's good for you. Again, going back to the premise of intention. Now that we're all grown and we're in this is just competing, we get our coaches, we're back to the same thing. You know, our coaches tell us what to eat. It's not because they're telling us what to eat without consulting us, letting them know, having them being educated of what our needs are. Then it goes back to the intention of why this is your plan, this is your meal. It's because it's customized and catered to what you need. So I just don't want it, no matter what your experience is, we have to go back to that intention. What is it for? And usually it's a good thing. So I pass that on to my children as well and make sure they know why. And for us to be here in the fitness industry, in the fitness world, we have to understand that the intention is always good and it's for our good. So it's just a comment.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I have 5 kiddos at home, and we talk a lot about, first of all, the theme is all food is okay, right? There's not like good foods or bad foods. It's just we talk a lot about balancing it, right? So of course you want to have your dessert. Great. Then yes, I'm encouraging you to eat your green beans too, right? And I think we're doing an amazing job as parents kind of modeling that behavior. You know, I mean, Natasha just made a comment about like, we're not going to have perfect days. It's going to need balance too. And I think we have this opportunity with our macros, and you know what we're doing is to have a little bit of balance in our life too. Like if my kid has a birthday party and they have a birthday cake, like, you know, there's likelihood that I'm going to eat the cake with my child on her birthday, right? Because that is modeling healthy, balanced behaviors. So.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Nope.
And then everybody, I think Coach Corinne put the handout in the notes down in the bottom of your screen. I think you can get it to it right through this meeting. I don't know if y'all can see that and get to it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's right
So
in
you
there.
guys you can download it. It's really good. Thank you so much, Amy. I'm going to
Yeah,
be
I
using
loved it.
that. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
You're
That's a
welcome.
good print out and stick on your mirror, buddy.
Yeah. I encourage you to put it somewhere, that maybe you can see it if you don't care about anybody else reading it. But I think it's some healthy habits for, like we talked about, a lot of us being moms, it's healthy habits for everybody, to just be more mindful in how you're speaking to yourself about food.
And you guys posted on the group chat the mantras.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the
Yeah.
chat
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. I think overall, though, I think if I were to give you guys one takeaway that's so important, is really to catch that negative talk that you say to yourself. Catch it, change it, put something positive in its place. And the more that you can do that over and over and over and over again, you're really changing your mindset about yourself. You're even scientifically changing the way that your food digests. And then you're changing your overall self-esteem and your sense of worthiness. You're loving yourself more. And I think that is, again, the biggest takeaway that I can give everyone. So
Thank you.
I love that.
thank you. We'll record it.
Thanks,
We'll
Amy.
record it and pass it out to anyone that may have missed it. So if you talk to any other athletes that might want to tune in, it should be posted the next couple days. So
Good. Thank you, Amy.
all right,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Amy.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic week.
Thank you.
Thank you.